Hey guys, tonight we are going to step back into the ancient world, far away from the gleaming white marble of the Senate and the fragrant, rose-scented gardens of the Roman elite, to explore the gritty, damp, and surprisingly rhythmic life of a Roman laundry worker. You probably believe this era was all about lavender, scented baths and pristine silk robes draped over noble shoulders, but the reality for those who kept the empire clean was far more aromatic and physically demanding. Before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through, tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive and the stories just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. While you are settling in, why not share in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world? It is always lovely to see the quiet community that gathers here in the late hours. Now, dim the lights, let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. The air in your small sleeping quarters is cool and carries the faint, lingering scent of damp wool and wood smoke. Outside your narrow window, the sky over the city of Pompeii is not yet blue, but a deep, bruised purple, the color of a grape just before it is crushed. You can hear the distant, hollow sound of a wooden cart rattling over the basalt paving stones a few streets away, a rhythmic clatter that signals the start of the city's heartbeat. You pull your thin wool blanket closer for a moment, savoring the last few seconds of stillness. You are a fuller, a professional of the fullonica, and while the work is hard, there is a steady, predictable comfort in the routine that awaits you. You rise from your pallet, your joints feeling a bit stiff from the previous day's labor. Your feet find the cool, slightly uneven surface of the terracotta floor. In the dim light, you dress in a simple, rough, spun tunic, one that has been washed so many times it feels soft against your skin, like a faded memory of a sheep's coat. You move through the small living space toward the workshop, which is attached to the house. The transition from the sleeping area to the workspace is marked by a shift in the air. It becomes heavier, cooler, and carries that unmistakable, sharp tang of ammonia. To a stranger, this smell might be overwhelming, but to you, it is simply the smell of productivity. It is the scent of the industry that keeps the Roman people looking their best. You enter the courtyard of the fullonica. In the pre-dawn light, the stone vats look like silent, open mouths waiting to be fed. The walls are painted with simple frescoes, perhaps a small shrine to Cardia, the goddess of hinges and protection, or images of fullers at work, their painted faces eternally focused on their tasks. Historians still argue whether these vibrant paintings were meant to inspire the workers, or if they were a way for the owner of the shop to show off his success to any visitors who might stop by to drop off their laundry. For you, they are just part of the scenery, familiar as the lines on your own palms. You begin the morning by checking the large ceramic jars that sit just outside the entrance of the shop, facing the street. These jars are a vital part of your trade. You see, in the Roman world, soap as we know it does not exist. Instead, You rely on the chemical properties of aged urine to break down the oils and grease in the heavy woolen fabrics. It is a quirky, fringed tidbit of history that often makes modern people wrinkle their noses, but to a Roman, it was a valuable resource. These jars are placed there for passers-by to relieve themselves, providing the shop with the essential ingredient for the cleaning process. You peer into the jars, noting the volume collected overnight. It is a slow, quiet task, checking the levels in the gray light of dawn, feeling the cool morning air on your face. The mainstream historical fact that most people forget is that the fullonica was not just a laundry. It was a textile finishing factory. You don't just wash clothes, you process new wool straight from the loom, shrinking it and thickening it until it becomes the dense, weather-resistant fabric required for a proper Roman toga. You walk over to a stack of unwashed garments that were dropped off the evening before. There are tunics of various sizes, some coarse and brown, others of a finer weave that likely belong to a local merchant. You run your hand over the fabric, feeling the natural oils, the lanolin, that still cling to the fibers. You start the first fire of the day under a lead-lined cauldron. The wood is dry and catches easily, the small flames licking at the base of the metal. You watch the smoke curl upward toward the open roof of the atrium, a thin gray ribbon against the darkening purple of the sky. The warmth of the fire is pleasant against your hands. You begin to mix the cleaning solution, a careful blend of the aged liquid from the jars, water, and perhaps a bit of fuller's earth, a type of clay that helps absorb grease. There is a specific rhythm to the pouring, a splashing sound that echoes softly against the stone walls. As the water begins to heat, you move to the treading vats. These are small, circular stone basins set into a raised platform. You step up onto the platform, feeling the smooth, worn edge of the stone under your feet. This is where the real work happens. You take a heavy, grease-laden toga and drop it into one of the basins, covering it with the prepared cleaning solution. You step into the vat, the liquid swirling around your ankles. It is cool at first, sending a small shiver up your spine, but you know that soon your own exertion will keep you warm. You begin to dance. That is what the Romans call it, the saltus fullonicus, or the fuller's dance. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, treading heavily onto the fabric. Your heels dig into the thick wool, forcing the cleaning solution through the fibers. You hold onto the low walls on either side of the vat for balance, your arms resting comfortably as your legs do the work. It is a slow, deliberate movement. Left, right, left, right. The sound is a dull rhythmic thud, a wet squelch that becomes the heartbeat of your morning. The repetition is hypnotic. You watch the ripples in the liquid, the way the light from the rising sun catches the small bubbles of foam. The city is waking up now. You can hear the shutters of nearby shops being pushed open, the calls of street vendors selling hot bread or fried chickpeas. But here, in the fullonica, the world feels enclosed and focused. You are centered in this motion, the steady pressure of your feet against the resistant wool. You think about the person who wore this toga, perhaps a man who walked the forum, debating laws or discussing the price of grain. Now, his status and his dignity are, quite literally, under your feet. Your mind wanders as you tread. You think about the texture of the wool, how it changes as it becomes saturated. It grows heavier, more substantial. You can feel the dirt and the oils leaving the fabric, the liquid in the vat turning a murky, cloudy gray. This is the sickening truth that outsiders talk about, the proximity to the waste of the city. But to you, it is a transformation. You are taking something soiled and making it new. There is a quiet pride in that, a sense of order being restored to the world, one toga at a time. You move to the next vat, and then the next. Each one requires the same steady, rhythmic attention. The physical demand is constant, but it isn't jarring. It's a slow burn of energy, a gradual warming of your muscles. You feel the strength in your calves and thighs, the result of years of this rhythmic dancing. Historians still argue whether the fullers suffered from specific ailments due to the constant contact with the cleaning chemicals, or if the physical nature of the work made them some of the heartiest members of the working class. You certainly feel strong, even if your skin is perpetually pale and your hands are softened by the water. The sun has finally cleared the horizon, and a beam of bright, golden light cuts through the opening in the roof, illuminating the steam rising from the central cauldron. It catches the dust motes dancing in the air, turning the workshop into a place of shifting light and shadow. You pause for a moment, wiping a bead of sweat from your forehead with the back of your hand. The contrast between the cool water at your feet and the growing warmth of the sun on your shoulders is deeply relaxing. You take a deep breath, and though the ammonia is there, you also catch the scent of baking bread from the shop next door. It is a complex tapestry of smells, the scent of a city that is alive and busy. You step out of the vat, your feet feeling light and tingly as the blood rushes back into them. You lift the heavy, sodden toga out of the basin. It is incredibly heavy now, the water adding significant weight to the dense wool. You drape it over the edge of the stone, letting the excess liquid drain back into the vat. The fabric is no longer the dull, yellowish gray of a dirty sheep. It is starting to show the potential for the brilliant, snowy white that every Roman citizen craves. You move to the rinsing area, where large stone basins are filled with fresh, clear water. This water comes from the city's aqueducts, a marvel of engineering that brings the cool, crisp taste of the mountains right into the heart of the workshop. You plunge the toga into the clear water, the fabric billowing out like a cloud under the surface. You use a long wooden pole to stir it, the water swirling in gentle eddies. The sound is different here, a lighter, splashing sound, like a mountain stream flowing over smooth pebbles. As you rinse, you think about the quirky nature of your profession. You are essential, yet often ridiculed. The poets write biting satires about the smell of the fuller, yet those same poets would never dream of appearing in public with a stained or yellowed garment. You are the invisible force that maintains the image of Roman civilization. Without you, the Senate would be a sea of dingy, graying wool instead of a bright, commanding assembly of white. You lift the toga out of the rinse water, your muscles bulging slightly with the effort. You wring it out, twisting the heavy fabric with practiced ease. The water spirals down into the drainage channel, disappearing into the complex subterranean world of Roman plumbing. You repeat the process with several more garments, the repetitive motions of lifting, rinsing, and wringing creating a soothing, predictable loop. By now, the workshop is fully active. Other workers have arrived, and the air is filled with the low hum of quiet conversation. Though no one speaks loudly, there is a shared understanding of the flow of the day. You move toward the drying area, an open-air space where long wooden poles are suspended between the walls. You carefully drape the wet garments over the poles, smoothing out the wrinkles with your hands. The fabric feels cool and heavy. As you hang the clothes, you notice the fine details of the weaving. Some togas have a purple border, the toga praetexta, worn by magistrates and certain priests. You handle these with extra care, ensuring the delicate dye isn't disturbed. You think about the social hierarchy of Rome, represented here on your drying racks. The heavy, coarse tunics of the laborers hang alongside the fine, lightweight wool of the wealthy. In the fullonica, everyone is equal in their need for cleanliness. The sun is higher now, and the air in the drying area is beginning to warm. A gentle breeze wafts through, caught by the damp fabric. You can hear the soft, rhythmic flapping of the wet wool as it moves in the wind, a sound like distant sails on a quiet sea. It is a peaceful moment, a pause in the physical labor of the day. You stand for a moment, watching the steam rise from the clothes as the sun begins its work. You look down at your hands, which are pruned and white from the water. They are the hands of a craftsman, a keeper of the city's appearance. You feel a sense of accomplishment. The morning's harvest of soiled garments is now a row of cleaning, dripping promises of tomorrow's dignity. The sickening truth of the work is balanced by the beauty of the result. You walk back toward the treading vats, your pace slow and steady. There are more garments to be processed, more dances to be performed. But for now, you feel a deep sense of calm. The world outside is busy and loud, but here within the walls of the fullonica, there is a quiet, rhythmic order. You are part of a tradition that spans generations, a vital link in the chain of Roman life. You prepare the next vat, the sound of the water pouring being the only noise in your immediate surroundings. You feel the weight of the next toga in your hands, the familiar texture of the wool. You step back up onto the platform, your feet finding their place on the smooth stone. You begin the dance again. Left, right, the thud, the squelch, the ripples. It is a meditation in motion, a way to be present in the task, while letting your mind wander to the distant hills or the quiet corners of your own memories. The morning light continues to shift, casting long shadows across the floor. The workshop is a place of constant transformation, where the dirty becomes clean and the raw becomes refined. You are the architect of that transformation. As you tread, you feel the tension leaving your shoulders. The world is a place of complex smells and hard work, but it is also a place of steady rhythms and quiet satisfactions. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the water and the feeling of the wool ground you. The smell of the ammonia is distant now, replaced by the scent of the sun on the damp stone and the faint, sweet smell of the drying wool. You are a fuller, and this is your world. It is a world of focus, of physical exertion, and of a deep, abiding peace that comes from a job well done. You continue your dance, the rhythmic motion carrying you forward into the day, one steady step at a time. The city of Pompeii continues to wake up around you, but you are tucked away in your quiet sanctuary of stone and water, a participant in the timeless story of human industry and the pursuit of a clean, orderly life. The morning has progressed. and the golden light of the sun is now stretching across the cobblestones outside the workshop entrance. You take a brief moment to rest your legs after the first round of treading. Your muscles feel warm and slightly heavy, a sensation that is not entirely unpleasant. You wipe your hands on a dry cloth, though the moisture never seems to truly leave your skin. It is time for one of the most essential, and perhaps the most misunderstood, tasks of your day. You need to replenish the supplies that make your work possible. You pick up a wooden yoke, its surface worn smooth by years of resting across your shoulders, and two large, empty ceramic amphorae. You step out from the shaded interior of the fullonica and into the street. The transition is subtle. The air here is slightly fresher, moving more freely between the tall stone buildings. You feel the rough texture of the yoke through your tunic, a familiar weight that centers you. As you walk, the empty jars make a soft, hollow sound against the wood of the yoke, a rhythmic clink that keeps time with your slow, steady pace. You aren't in a rush. In the Roman world, haste is for the messengers and the desperate. For a fuller, the work is a slow, unfolding process, and your walk through the city should reflect that. The street is narrow, and the buildings on either side provide a cooling shadow. You look down at the paving stones, noting the deep ruts worn into the basalt by generations of cartwheels. They are like the veins of the city, carrying the lifeblood of commerce and daily life. You pass a small shrine at the corner, where a few withered flowers lie at the feet of a stone la, the guardian of the neighborhood. You offer a silent nod of respect, your feet continuing their steady rhythm. You are heading toward the collection points, the large jars you placed at strategic corners and outside public buildings yesterday. The golden resource you are gathering is, quite literally, the foundation of your industry. While the rest of the city might view the contents of these jars as waste, to you they are liquid gold. You reach the first jar, a large, belly-shaped vessel of coarse orange clay. It sits tucked into a small alcove near a busy intersection. You set your empty amphorae down on the ground, the stone feeling cool against your palms. You lift the lid of the collection jar. The scent is sharp, a concentrated burst of ammonia that stings the back of your throat for a second. But you are used to it. It is the scent of potential. Historians still argue whether fullers were solely responsible for placing these jars throughout the city, or if the municipal government took an active role in managing what was effectively the city's first recycling program. Some believe the city leaders encouraged the practice to keep the streets cleaner, while others suggest it was a purely private enterprise driven by the high demand from the fullonica. Regardless of the logistics, you are grateful for the contribution of your fellow citizens. You use a large, long-handled ladle to transfer the liquid from the collection jar into your amphorae. The sound is a steady, rhythmic pour, a heavy liquid melody that echoes in the quiet alcove. You move with a slow, practiced grace. You are careful not to spill a single drop. You think about the mainstream historical fact that often surprises people. The Emperor Vespasian actually placed a tax on the collection of this liquid. When his son, Titus, complained that it was a disgusting way to fill the imperial coffers, Vespasian famously held a gold coin from the first day's tax to his son's nose and asked if it smelled. When Titus said no, the emperor replied, "Pecunia non olet," Money does not smell. You find a quiet, sleepy humor in this. Even the emperor recognized the value of what everyone else tried to ignore. You are part of an economy that turns the mundane and the discarded into something of great value. Once your first amphora is full, you feel the significant change in weight. It is heavy now, a solid, grounding presence. You cap it securely and turn to the second one. As you work, you notice a small group of children playing a few houses down. They are tossing walnuts into a small hole in the ground. Their movements quick and energetic compared to your slow, deliberate labor. You watch them for a moment, appreciating the simple joy of their game. They represent the future of the city, while you are the one holding its present together, ensuring that when those children grow up and put on their first adult togas, those garments will be as white and clean as the clouds. A quirky, fringe tidbit about your profession is that not all liquid is created equal. You have learned over the years that the liquid collected near the gymnasiums and baths, where people are more active and consume a different diet, often has a higher ammonia content. You treat these collections like a master vintner treats a prized vintage of wine. You know which jars will yield the strongest cleaning power and which are better suited for the final, gentler stages of the process. It is a subtle science, one learned through years of observation and a keen sense of smell. You finish filling your jars and hoist the yoke back onto your shoulders. The weight is substantial now, pressing into your muscles. But you find a certain satisfaction in the strain. It reminds you that you are doing something tangible, something that requires strength and endurance. You begin the walk back to the workshop. The city is busier now. You have to navigate around a merchant, setting up a stall of bright red pottery, and a group of slaves carrying a heavy litter. You move through the crowd with a quiet dignity, your yoke acting as a sort of barrier, giving you a small bubble of personal space. People tend to step aside for a fuller with full jars, partly out of respect for your work and partly, you suspect, to avoid the aroma. As you walk, your mind wanders to the other ingredients you use. In addition to the liquid, you rely heavily on fuller's earth. You think about the texture of that fine, powdery clay. It is soft to the touch, almost like silk, yet it has the incredible power to draw out the deepest grease stains from the thickest wool. You imagine the earth being mined in distant quarries, perhaps in North Africa or the hills of central Italy, and traveling across the sea and over the mountains, just to end up in your humble workshop. It makes you feel connected to a vast, invisible network of trade and labor. The sun is now warm on your back, and you can feel a slight dampness under your tunic. You reach the workshop and carefully lower the jars to the ground. The transition back into the shaded atrium feels like a cool embrace. You take a moment to breathe in the familiar sense of the fullonica, the damp wool, the wood smoke, and now the fresh supply of cleaning liquid. You begin the process of mixing the new supply with the older, fermented batches. There is a specific ratio you follow, a secret passed down from your father, who learned it from his. It is a slow, methodical task, pouring and stirring until the mixture reaches the perfect consistency. You look at the large stone storage vats. They are deep and dark, their surfaces reflecting the light from the roof opening. You pour the new liquid in, watching the way it disappears into the depths. Historians still argue whether the fullers also used chemicals like potash or lime in their mixtures, or if they relied solely on the natural properties of the ammonia and clay. In your experience, nature provides everything you need if you know how to work with it. You feel a sense of harmony with the world, a feeling that you are working in tandem with the natural forces of chemistry and physics. You move to the corner of the workshop where the sacks of fuller's earth are stored. You open one, and a small cloud of fine, white dust rises into the air, dancing in a sunbeam. You run your fingers through the powder. It feels cool and incredibly smooth. You begin to measure out the portions you will need for the afternoon's work. There is a quiet, rhythmic sound to the scoop hitting the clay, a soft, muffled thud that is deeply calming. You are preparing the elements, setting the stage for the next transformation. You think about the sickening truth. Again, the way people talk about the smell of your shop. To you, it isn't sickening. It's the smell of life being scrubbed clean. It's the scent of the city's effort being recycled and reused. You find a strange beauty in the cycle. Nothing is wasted. Everything has a purpose. You are the one who recognizes that purpose and harnesses it. It gives you a sense of belonging, a feeling that you are an essential part of the Roman machinery. The workshop has reached a state of quiet productivity. Your fellow workers are busy with their own tasks. Some are rinsing, some are brushing, others are preparing the sulfur for the bleaching stage. There is very little talking, just the sounds of the work itself. The rhythmic treading, the splashing of water, the soft scrape of brushes against wool. It is a symphony of industry, a low, volume hum that fills the space and provides a background for your thoughts. You take a seat on a low wooden stool for a moment, watching the dust motes settle. Your arms feel a bit tired from the heavy lifting, but it's a good kind of tired. You feel the pulse in your fingertips, a steady, calm beat. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. The sun continues its journey across the sky, and the shadows in the atrium shift and lengthen. You are in no hurry. The wool will wait. The cleaning will happen in its own time. You think about the togas that are currently drying on the racks. They represent the final product of all this effort. Soon, they will be taken down, brushed, and pressed until they are perfect. But for now, they are just fabric and water and air, slowly relinquishing their moisture to the breeze. You find a deep peace in this middle stage, the time between the raw materials and the finished result. It is a time of potential, a time of quiet waiting. You rise from your stool, feeling the strength returning to your legs. It is time to return to the vats. You have the supplies, you have the energy, and you have the rhythm. You walk over to the storage vat and take a bucket of the freshly mixed cleaning solution. It is heavy, but you carry it with ease. You pour it into one of the empty treading basins, the liquid swirling and foaming slightly. The sound is a deep, resonant splash that echoes through the room. You pick up a fresh piece of unwashed wool, its surface rough and oily. You feel the weight of it in your hands. This is the start of a new journey. You place it in the vat and step up onto the platform. You feel the cool liquid rise around your ankles, and you begin the dance again. Left, right, left, right. The rhythm is even more comfortable now, like an old friend returning. You are the fuller, the harvester of the city's golden resources, and you are ready to continue your work. The city of Pompeii continues its busy day outside your walls, but inside you are centered and calm. The world is a place of endless cycles, and you are happy to be a part of this one. You watch the ripples in the vat, the way they catch the light, and you let your mind drift. You are not just washing clothes, you are maintaining the fabric of an empire, one steady, rhythmic step at a time. The smell, the weight, the effort, all of it is part of the story. A story that you are telling with your feet and your hands and your quiet, focused presence. The afternoon sun has now climbed to its zenith, turning the open rectangle of the atrium roof into a solid block of brilliant, burning blue. The heat of the Italian day begins to press down into the courtyard. But here, standing ankle, deep in the trading vats, the temperature remains surprisingly manageable. You feel the coolness of the cleaning solution, wicking away the heat from your skin, even as your muscles burn with the steady exertion of the fuller's dance. You have moved into a state of flow, a mental space where the world beyond the stone walls of the fullonica ceases to exist, and all that remains is the weight of the wool and the rhythmic pressure of your feet. This is the never-ending dance of the vats, the core labor that defines your existence. You look down at your feet, which are now almost invisible beneath the cloudy, frothing mixture of water, aged liquid, and fuller's earth. Your skin has become remarkably soft, the calluses of your youth long since worn away by the constant friction of wet wool. There is a curious sensation to it, a mix of slickness from the clay and the rough, scratchy resistance of the fibers. Historians still argue whether the fullers of this era performed their dance to the accompaniment of music or rhythmic chanting, perhaps to keep their movements synchronized and their spirits high. While you have no flute player today, the rhythm is built into your very bones. It is a 4-beat count that you have practiced since you were tall enough to reach the vat's edge. You shift your weight. 1, 2, 3, 4. You lift your left knee high, letting the heavy, wet wool drape momentarily over your foot before driving it back down into the depths. Then the right. The wool is no longer just a garment. It has become a living thing, a heavy, sodden creature that resists your efforts with a stubborn, silent weight. This is the mainstream historical fact, that many people overlook. Your job is not just to clean, but to felt the fabric. Wool, when agitated in alkaline water, begins to shrink and thicken. The tiny scales on the hair fibers lock together, transforming a loose weave into a dense, durable material that can hold the majestic folds of a Roman toga. Without your dancing feet, the toga would be a limp, flimsy thing, incapable of conveying the gravity and status of a citizen. You feel the sweat beginning to bead on your brow, despite the cool water at your feet. A single drop rolls down your temple, and you pause for a heartbeat to wipe it away with your shoulder, never letting your legs stop their steady motion. You are working on a particularly large piece of fabric now, a heavy cloak intended for a winter campaign, or perhaps a long journey north. It is dyed a deep, earthy brown, the color of rich soil after a rainstorm. As you tread, you can feel the natural oils of the wool, the lanolin, breaking down and mixing with the alkaline solution. A quirky, fringe tidbit you've noticed over the years is that the wool of certain breeds of sheep, particularly those from the colder mountain regions, feels different underfoot. It is oilier, more resilient, and requires a much longer dance to reach the desired thickness. The sound in the workshop has shifted as the afternoon settles in. The initial morning bustle has smoothed out into a low, consistent hum. You can hear the rhythmic squelch, press, squelch, press of your neighbors in the adjacent vats. To your left is a younger man, his movements slightly too fast, his energy unspent. To your right is an older worker, whose dance is so slow and deliberated, almost looks like he is standing still, yet he processes more wool in a day than anyone else. There is a communal silence here, a shared understanding that talking wastes breath and breaks the concentration required to keep the rhythm. You watch the way the light reflects off the wet stone surfaces, creating dancing patterns of silver and gray on the walls. You find yourself thinking about the sickening truth. Again, though with the gentle sarcasm that comes from long experience. People in the street might hold their noses as they pass, but they do not see the beauty in the chemistry. You are a master of the unseen. You understand how the nitrogen-rich liquid interacts with the oils of the sheep and the fine particles of the clay to create a cleaning agent more powerful than anything the perfumed shops of the elite could produce. You are the alchemist of the city's waste. Historians still argue whether the fullers were considered a lowly class because of the smell, or if they were actually quite well respected because of their essential role in the economy and their organized guilds. For you, the status matters less than the steady, predictable nature of the work. Your legs are starting to feel the weight of the hours. It is a dull, heavy ache in your thighs, but it is not a sharp or jagged pain. It is the kind of fatigue that invites the mind to drift even further. You imagine the sheep that once wore this wool, grazing on the sun-drenched slopes of the Apennines. You think about the shearers who gathered the fleece, the women who spun the yarn, and the weavers who sat at their great looms for weeks to create this single piece of cloth. Now, it is your turn to add your labor to its history. You are the one who gives it its final form, its strength, and its purity. You decide to add a handful of fuller's herb to the vat, a plant known to some as soapwort. You reach for a small bundle of the dried leaves kept in a basket nearby and crumble them into the water. As the leaves hit the liquid, they begin to release a gentle, natural lather. The scent changes slightly, a faint, herbal note cutting through the sharp ammonia. It is a small luxury, a secret of the trade that helps with the most stubborn of grease spots. The bubbles it creates are small and fine, popping with a soft, nearly silent hiss that you can only feel through the vibrations in the stone. The repetitive motion is like a cradle rocking. You are almost tempted to close your eyes, but you must remain alert to the texture of the wool. If you tread too long, the garment will shrink too much and become unwearable. If you stop too soon, it will remain loose and prone to tearing. You are constantly reading the fabric with the soles of your feet. You can feel the moment the fibers begin to lock together, the moment the wool transitions from a collection of threads into a unified sheet of felt. It is a subtle change, a tightening of the resistance, a shift in the way the water flows through the weave. You think about the history of the toga itself, how it has grown larger and more complex over the centuries. In the early days of the Republic, it was a simple, wrap-around garment. Now, it is a massive semicircle of wool, often 18 feet wide, requiring precise folding and constant maintenance. Your work has become more important as Roman fashion has become more demanding. You are the one who ensures that the heavy folds of the sinus and the umbo hang correctly, that the fabric has enough body to maintain its shape throughout a long day in the forum. The shadows in the courtyard are beginning to stretch, reaching out like long, dark fingers across the wet floor. The heat is still present, but it has lost its aggressive edge, becoming a soft blanket like warmth. You take a moment to change your stance, leaning more heavily on the side walls to give your lower back a rest. The stone is warm where the sun has hit it, providing a pleasant contrast to the cool liquid in the vat. You look at the ripples your feet are making. Perfect, concentric circles that move outward and break against the curved sides of the basin. There is a certain irony in the fact that the most public-facing members of society, the orators, the senators, the priests, are utterly dependent on the most hidden and smelly members of society. You imagine a senator standing on the rostra, his toga brilliant, blinding white, moving the hearts of the people with his words. He likely never thinks of the fuller who danced for hours to make that white possible. He never thinks of the rhythmic thud of feet in a damp workshop in Pompeii. But you think of him. You take pride in knowing that the dignity of the empire is resting on the quality of your dance. Your mind moves to the fringed tidbits of the trade again. You recall hearing of fullers in the eastern provinces who use different types of clay, or who even use volcanic ash to help with the cleaning. You wonder if their dance is different from yours, if their rhythm is faster or slower. It is a vast world, yet everyone, everywhere, needs their clothes cleaned. You feel a sense of kinship with those distant workers, a global brotherhood of the vat. As the afternoon begins to wane, you prepare to finish this particular batch. The wool feels dense and firm under your feet. The water has become a dark, saturated gray, having absorbed all the impurities of the raw fabric. You step out of the vat, your legs feeling strangely light and unburdened, as if you could float away. You reach down and grasp the edge of the heavy cloak, pulling it up out of the liquid. It is an immense weight, a sodden mass that requires every bit of your strength to lift. You drape it over the draining stone, watching as the murky water pours out of the fibers in a heavy, continuous stream. You stand there for a moment, catching your breath. Your heart rate slows, matching the lengthening shadows. The workshop is quiet. The only sound the steady drip, drip, drip of water hitting the drainage channels. You look at your hands, then at your feet. They are clean, in a way that few other Romans are. The very chemicals that clean the wool have cleaned your skin, removing every trace of the city's dust. You are a fuller, and your dance for the day is nearing its end. But for now, you simply stand in the cooling air, savoring the stillness and the satisfaction of a task that is physically demanding yet mentally peaceful. The never-ending dance of the vats is a testament to the endurance of the human spirit and the quiet power of routine. It is a slow, rhythmic journey from the raw and the soiled to the refined and the pure. You take a deep breath, and as the scent of the soapwort lingers in the air, you prepare yourself for the next stage of the process. There is still much to do before the sun sets, but you are ready. You have the rhythm, you have the strength, and you have the quiet, sleepy focus that makes the hours disappear like water into the thirsty wool. The late afternoon light has begun to take on a honeyed amber hue, casting long, elegant shadows across the courtyard of the fullonica. The intense heat of the midday sun has softened, leaving behind a mellow warmth that radiates from the stone walls. You have finished the heavy treading, and the togas are now clean, but they are not yet the brilliant, snowy white that the Roman upper class demands. To achieve that level of radiance, you must move into the most delicate and, in some ways, the most ethereal part of your work, the bleaching process. This is where you trade the rhythmic squelch of the vats for the silent, drifting clouds of the sulfur cage. You walk over to the storage area and retrieve a large, bell-shaped frame made of woven wicker. This is the viminum, a tool as essential to your trade as the stone basins themselves. It is surprisingly light, the dried willow branches clicking softly against one another as you lift it. You carry it to the center of the drying yard, where a series of small, shallow ceramic bowls are set into the floor. This part of the day requires a different kind of focus, a slow, careful attention to the air and the fire. You are no longer using your muscles to beat the dirt out of the wool. Now, you are using the very elements of the earth to transform its color. The mainstream historical fact that most people learn about Roman clothing is that the pure white of a toga was a symbol of status and citizenship. However, wool is naturally a creamy, off-white color, or sometimes even a dull yellow. To get that iconic, blinding brightness, you must subject the fabric to sulfur dioxide fumes. You take one of the freshly rinsed togas, still damp and heavy, and drape it carefully over the outside of the wicker frame. You spend several minutes smoothing the fabric, ensuring there are no folds or overlaps where the fumes might be blocked. It is a quiet, meditative process, your hands moving rhythmically over the cool, damp wool. Once the toga is perfectly positioned, you turn your attention to the small ceramic bowl beneath the frame. You take a piece of brimstone, raw, yellow sulfur, and place it in the center of the dish. You ignite it with a small coal from the central hearth. At first, there is only a tiny, flickering blue flame, almost invisible in the afternoon light. But soon, a thin, wispy trail of white smoke begins to rise. This is the sickening truth of the bleaching process. The fumes are sharp and acrid, catching in the back of your throat if you stand too close. You move back a few steps, watching as the smoke begins to fill the hollow space inside the wicker bell. A quirky, fringe tidbit that few people realize is that fullers often added specific dried berries or even a handful of salt to the burning sulfur. Historians and enthusiasts of ancient chemistry suggest that these additions might have been used to stabilize the flame or perhaps to subtly alter the tone of the white, though the primary agent was always the sulfur itself. You watch as the smoke becomes denser, a thick, milky mist that is trapped by the heavy, wet wool of the toga. The fabric acts as a filter, capturing the sulfurous clouds and allowing the chemical reaction to take place within the very fibers of the wool. As you stand there, guarding the cages, you find yourself in a moment of profound stillness. The workshop is quiet now, as the other workers have moved to the final stages of brushing or are preparing for the evening meal. You are the guardian of the clouds. Historians still argue whether the fullers suffered from chronic respiratory issues due to these daily sulfur treatments, or if the open, air design of the Roman fullonica allowed for enough ventilation to keep the workers healthy. For you, it is simply a matter of respecting the wind. You stand upwind of the cages, letting the gentle evening breeze carry any stray wisp of smoke away from your face. The sight of the viminum covered in white wool, with smoke gently leaking from the bottom, is almost ghostly. It looks like a silent, glowing bell sitting in the courtyard. You think about the transformation happening inside the fibers. The sulfur is literally stripping away the natural yellow pigments of the sheep's hair, leaving behind a skeletal, pure white. It is a process of refinement, a way of taking the raw material of nature and forcing it to conform to the high standards of Roman civilization. You find a quiet irony in the fact that this divine white is born from the pungent yellow stones of the earth and the stinging smoke of a small fire. You move from cage to cage, checking the progress of each garment. You have several togas in various stages of bleaching. The process cannot be rushed. If the fabric remains under the cage for too long, the sulfur can weaken the fibers, making the wool brittle. If it is removed too soon, the color will be uneven, a patchy mix of white and cream. You rely on your eyes and your sense of smell to know the exact moment to end the treatment. You lean in slightly, not too close, and catch a whiff of the air. The scent is heavy and metallic, like the air before a lightning storm. As you wait, your mind drifts to the city beyond the walls. You can hear the distant, muffled sounds of Pompeii wending down for the day. The bells of a nearby temple chime softly, a series of bronze notes that hang in the warm air. You think about the men who will wear these togas tomorrow. They will wrap themselves in this pristine white wool, feeling the weight of the fabric and the dignity it provides. They will walk to the forum, unaware of the sulfur clouds, or the wicker cages, or the quiet fuller who stood in the twilight to make their appearance possible. There is a secret satisfaction in being the invisible hand behind the grandeur of Rome. The sun has dipped lower, and the light in the courtyard is now a soft, bruised purple, mirroring the color of the sky you saw this morning. The white of the togas on the frames seems to glow in the gathering dusk, catching what little light remains. You begin the process of removing the first toga. You carefully lift the heavy fabric off the wicker frame, being careful not to inhale the concentrated cloud of smoke that escapes from beneath. The wool feels different now. It has a certain crispness to it, a cleanliness that goes beyond just the absence of dirt. You hold the fabric up to the fading light. It is beautiful. The dull yellowish tint is gone, replaced by a brilliant, cool white that seems to vibrate against the darkening sky. You run your hand over the surface, feeling the slight roughness of the fibers that have been opened by the fumes. This is the pinnacle of your craft. This is why people come to your shop instead of the smaller, less experienced laundries. You have mastered the balance of the elements, the water of the vats, the earth of the clay, and now the air and fire of the sulfur. You carry the bleached toga to the rinsing area for one final, gentle wash. This rinse is not meant to clean, but to remove any lingering traces of the sulfur and to soften the fibers. You use the coolest, clearest water from the aqueduct pipe. The sound of the water hitting the bleached wool is different from the heavy splashing of the morning. It is a lighter, more delicate sound, like rain on a leaf. You move slowly, your movements fluid and graceful, reflecting the calm of the evening. As you work, you think about the poetic repetition of your life. Every day follows this same arc, from the gritty reality of the collection jars to the ethereal beauty of the sulfur clouds. It is a cycle that mirrors the rise and fall of the sun. You find a deep sense of security in this repetition. While the world of politics and empire may be chaotic and unpredictable, the laws of chemistry and the properties of wool remain constant. You are a master of these laws, a quiet sovereign of your own small domain. The quirky nature of the sulfur process always brings a small smile to your face. You've heard stories of fullers who use too much sulfur and end up turning their customers' clothes a strange shade of blue, green, or those who forget to monitor the wind and end up choking half the neighborhood. You take pride in your precision. You are an artist whose medium is smoke and wool. You understand the boring details, the exact weight of the brimstone, the precise weave of the wicker that lead to a perfect result. The workshop is now almost entirely in shadow, the only light coming from the dying embers in the ceramic bowls. You go around and extinguish each one, pressing a stone lid over the sulfur to cut off the oxygen. The white smoke thins and vanishes, leaving only a faint, lingering tang in the cooling air. You stand for a moment in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by the ghostly shapes of the togas hanging on their frames. They look like a gathering of silent spirits, waiting for the morning to bring them back to life. Your body feels a deep, satisfying weariness. The physical labor of the morning and the mental focus of the afternoon have combined to create a state of peaceful exhaustion. Your breathing is slow and steady, matching the quiet rhythm of the city. You look up at the first few stars beginning to prick through the velvet blue of the sky. The air is fresh now, the breeze having swept away the last of the fumes. You feel clean not just in body, but in mind. Historians still argue about the exact chemical composition of the sulfur used in these workshops, questioning if it was pure or mixed with other volcanic minerals found near Vesuvius. To you, it is simply the burning stone, a gift from the earth that allows you to do your job. You appreciate the simplicity of it. You don't need complex machines or expensive dyes. You just need the patience to watch the smoke and the wisdom to know when the transformation is complete. You begin to move the bleached garments to the indoor racks for the night. They are still slightly damp, and they will need the gentle airflow of the atrium to dry completely before the final brushing tomorrow. You handle them with extreme care, your touch light and respectful. These are no longer just pieces of wool. They are the finished canvases of your labor. You drape them over the wooden poles, smoothing them one last time with your palms. The fabric feels cool and substantial. As you finish the last of the garments, the workshop is truly dark. You move toward your small living quarters, your feet finding the familiar path across the terracotta floor without the need for light. The scent of the sulfur still clings faintly to your hair and skin, a lingering reminder of the day's work. It is not a bad smell. It is a sign of productivity and success. It is the scent of a fuller who has done his duty to the city and its citizens. You take a final look back at the courtyard. The wicker cages sit in a neat row, empty now, their work done for the day. The stone vats are dark and silent. The fires are out. The world is at rest. you feel a profound sense of connection to the history of your trade, a lineage of workers who have stood in this same spot, watching the same smoke rise toward the same stars. You are a part of something much larger than yourself, a vital thread in the vast, complex tapestry of Roman life. You settle onto your pallet, your muscles finally letting go of the day's tension. The coolness of the evening air is a soothing balm. You close your eyes, and in the darkness, you can still see the faint, glowing white of the togas under the sulfur cages. You can still hear the rhythmic clicking of the wicker frames. It is a peaceful, hypnotic memory that carries you toward sleep. The sickening truth of the sulfur is forgotten, replaced by the quiet beauty of the result. Tomorrow, you will wake and begin the cycle again. But for now, you are content to drift in the stillness of the Roman night, a master of the clouds and the wool, resting after a day of quiet, essential labor. The next morning arrives with a soft, diffused light that filters through the high openings of the fullonica, painting the stone floor in shades of pale blue and cool gray. You wake before the city's noise begins in earnest, feeling a sense of quiet anticipation. Today is about the finish. Today, the raw, bleached, and slightly stiff wool will be transformed into the soft, luxurious fabric that defines Roman elegance. You walk into the main workspace, and the air feels different. Less damp than yesterday, and the sharp scent of sulfur has faded into a faint, clean memory. The togas and tunics hang from the indoor racks like silent, white sentinels, having spent the night losing the last of their moisture to the gentle drafts of the atrium. You approach the first toga. You reach out and touch the fabric. It is dry now, but it feels somewhat rough and hairy. The process of treading and bleaching has raised the tiny fibers of the wool, creating a fuzzy surface that lacks the professional sheen of a finished garment. This is where the art of brushing begins. You move to a workbench where your tools are laid out in a neat, orderly row. Among them are several specialized bronze brushes with fine, stiff bristles and several dried skins of a very specific animal, a quirky, fringed tidbit that often surprises those unfamiliar with your trade. Is the Roman fuller's reliance on the hedgehog. Historians and naturalists of the era, like Pliny the Elder, noted that the skin of a hedgehog, the Erinaceus, was one of the most effective tools for raising the nap of woolen cloth. You pick up one of these skins. It is dry and stiff, the many small spines providing a natural, multi-pointed brush that no man-made tool can quite replicate. You run your thumb gently over the spines, feeling their prickly resistance. It is a strange, humble object, yet it is essential for creating the smooth look that the elite demand. You begin the brushing process. You drape the toga over a smooth, rounded wooden beam that allows you to work on one section at a time. You start at the top, holding the hedgehog skin firmly, but not too tightly. You move it downward in long, slow, rhythmic strokes. The sound is a soft, dry rasping, like the wind moving through parched grass. You aren't just cleaning the fabric, you are teasing the nap. You want to lift the fibers so they all lie in the same direction, creating a uniform texture that will catch the light evenly. The repetition is soothing. Down, lift, return. Lift, return. You watch as the fuzzy, chaotic surface of the wool begins to smooth out under your hand. It is like grooming a large, silent animal. You think about the mainstream historical fact that Romans were intensely focused on the finish of their wool. A toga wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was a statement of order and civilization. If the nap was messy or the texture uneven, it suggested a lack of discipline in the wearer. You are the one who provides that discipline, one stroke of the hedgehog skin at a time. As you work, you notice the way the dust motes dance in the shafts of morning light. They rise from the fabric with every stroke of the brush, tiny specks of wool and earth swirling in the air before settling again on the cool stone floor. You move with a slow, deliberate grace, your shoulders rising and falling in time with your arm. The physical effort is less intense than the treading of yesterday, but it requires a more refined focus. You must be careful not to press too hard, or you might tear the delicate fibers or leave a permanent mark on the bleached wool. Historians still argue whether the most expensive togas were brushed with these natural tools, or if the very wealthiest Romans preferred a velvet finish achieved through even more labor-intensive methods, such as shearing the nap with tiny, sharp blades after it was raised. You've seen some of these ultra-fine garments in the market, and while they are beautiful, you take pride in the honest, sturdy elegance of a perfectly brushed woolen toga. There is a tactile satisfaction in feeling the fabric transition from rough to smooth, from raw to refined. You move to the aina, the bronze brush, for the finer details around the hems and the purple borders of the toga praetexta. The metal bristles make a higher pitched, more metallic sound as they move over the wool, a faint, rhythmic scratching that echoes softly against the walls. You pay close attention to the transition between the white wool and the dyed borders. The dye must not be disturbed, and the fibers must be aligned just as perfectly as the rest of the garment. You are a technician of the surface, a master of the outer layer. After several hours of brushing, the pile of garments on the finished side of the bench has grown. Each one is now smooth and soft to the touch, the nap lying flat and orderly. But the process is not yet complete. The wool is still somewhat bulky, and the garments have lost the crisp, flat shape they had when they were first woven. To restore that new look, you must use the pressorium, the great screw press. You walk over to the press, which stands in a corner of the workshop like a massive wooden monument. It is made of thick beams of dark, seasoned oak, held together by iron bolts. In the center is a large, hand-carved wooden screw, as thick as a man's thigh. The smell of the press is different from the rest of the shop. It smells of old timber, beeswax, and a hint of the olive oil used to lubricate the threads of the screw. It is a heavy, grounding scent that speaks of strength and permanence. You begin by carefully folding the brushed togas. This is a task that requires immense patience. A Roman toga is not folded like a modern shirt. It must be folded in a specific way to preserve its massive, semi-circular shape, while ensuring that the pressure of the press will be distributed evenly. You lay the toga out on a large, clean wooden platform. You smooth out every wrinkle with your palms, feeling the coolness of the wood beneath the wool. Then you begin to fold, layer upon layer, slow and steady. The sound of the fabric sliding against itself is a soft, rhythmic hush, a whisper of white wool. Once the garment is a neat, thick square, you place it between two heavy, polished wooden boards. You repeat this for several togas, stacking them carefully in the center of the press. The stack grows taller, a tower of pristine, white potential. You then move to the handle of the screw. It is a long wooden bar that passes through the head of the screw. You grasp the smooth, worn wood and begin to turn. At first, the screw moves easily. You can hear the rhythmic clack, clack, clack of the wooden threads as they settle into one another. But as the upper board meets the stack of wool, the resistance increases. You shift your weight, using your legs and core to turn the handle. Historians still argue whether these massive presses were operated by a single skilled fuller, or if they required the combined strength of several workers, or even a system of pulleys and weights to achieve the necessary pressure. In your shop, you prefer the manual touch. You want to feel the resistance. You want to know exactly how much pressure is being applied. The sound of the press becomes deeper, a low-pitched groan of wood under tension. It is a slow, rhythmic labor. You turn the handle half a circle, then pause. You let the wool settle, giving the fibers time to compress and, remember, their new, flat shape. Then you turn again. The pressure is immense. You are literally squashing the air out of the wool, forcing the fibers to lie as flat as possible. This is what gives the Roman toga its characteristic sheen and its ability to hold those crisp, architectural folds that look so impressive in the Forum. You spend a long time at the press, moving between the different stacks, adjusting the pressure, and ensuring that everything remains perfectly aligned. The workshop has become very quiet. The other workers are occupied with their own final tasks, and the only sound is the occasional, resonant creak of the oak beams. It is a peaceful, mechanical rhythm. You feel a sense of connection to the machine, as if your own strength is being translated through the wooden threads and into the fabric. As the afternoon light begins to slant through the windows, you reach the final level of pressure. The handle will turn no further. You lock it in place with a wooden peg, the sound of the mallet hitting the peg being a sharp, final thud that signals the end of the day's heavy work. Now the togas must sit in the press for several hours, perhaps even overnight, to ensure the finish is permanent. You stand back and look at the press. It looks like a giant at rest, holding the dignity of the city's elite within its powerful wooden grip. You wipe the sweat from your forehead and take a slow, deep breath. The air in the workshop is still and calm. You look at your hands, which are tired but steady. You have groomed the wool with the skin of a hedgehog, and you have tamed it with the power of the press. There is a profound sense of accomplishment in this transition. You have taken a raw, dirty, and chaotic material and, through a series of rhythmic, traditional steps, turned it into something of supreme order and beauty. The sickening truth of the fuller's life, the smells, the grime, the physical strain, feels very far away in this moment. Here, in the quiet presence of the press and the smooth, brushed wool, you see only the craftsmanship. You think about the fringe tidbits you've heard from traveling merchants, rumors of new types of presses being developed in the north that use water power to turn the screws. You find the idea interesting, but you wonder if a machine could ever have the feel that you have. Could a water wheel know when the pressure is just right? Could a gear feel the subtle resistance of a fine, weaved toga? You doubt it. The sun is beginning to set, casting long, orange bars of light across the press. The wood seems to glow, the grain of the oak standing out in sharp relief. You walk around the workshop one last time, checking the status of the remaining garments. Everything is in its place. The brushes are cleaned, the hedgehog skins are stored, and the press is locked. You feel a deep, sleepy satisfaction. Your body is ready for rest, but your mind is still lingering on the textures and rhythms of the day. You think about the cycle of the wool. It began on a sheep, was transformed by the weaver, was danced by your feet, bleached by the sulfur, groomed by the hedgehog, and finally compressed by the oak. Each step was a ritual, a rhythmic contribution to the final result. You are one link in a very long chain, but your link is the one that provides the final, visible perfection. As you prepare to retire to your sleeping quarters, the city of Pompeii is quieting down once again. The distant sounds of the evening market are fading, and the air is cooling. You feel a sense of peace. The togas in the press are safe, their fibers slowly aligning under the weight of the oak. Tomorrow, you will release the screw, and the fabric will emerge flat, smooth, and brilliant, ready to be returned to the citizens who will wear them with pride. You settle onto your palate, the familiar scent of the workshop surrounding you. It is a complex aroma, a mix of wood, wool, and a hint of the beeswax from the press. It is the scent of your life, and it is deeply comforting. You close your eyes, and in the darkness, you can still feel the rhythmic motion of the brush and the steady resistance of the screw. You are a fuller, a master of the finish, and you have done your work well. The world is a place of textures and pressures, and you are content to drift off to sleep, knowing that you have brought order to the chaos, one rhythmic stroke at a time. The long shadows of the late afternoon have finally merged into a single, soft veil of twilight that drapes over the city of Pompeii. The intense physical demands of the treading vats and the meticulous focus of the pressing room are behind you for today. As the workshop transitions from a place of labor to a place of rest, you find yourself entering the most human part of your existence, your place within the guild. You wash your face and arms in a basin of cool, clear water, watching the pale residue of the fuller's earth swirl away down the drain. You change into a clean tunic, one that has been perfectly brushed and pressed by your own hands, and feel the soft, familiar weight of the wool against your skin. You are no longer just a laborer, you are a member of the Collegium Fullinum, the prestigious and tight-knit guild of fullers. You walk toward the communal area of the fullonica, a space where the workers and the owner gather as the day ends. The walls here are decorated with frescoes that depict your daily life, but in these paintings, the work looks almost heroic. You see images of fullers dancing in their vats, their muscles defined and their faces serene. In one corner, there is a small, beautifully maintained shrine to Minerva, the goddess of wisdom and crafts, whom you claim as your divine patron. This is the mainstream historical fact that anchors your social identity. Fullers were not just random laborers. They were organized into powerful trade guilds that functioned as part business association, part social club, and part religious brotherhood. These guilds provided a sense of belonging and a social safety net in a world that could often be harsh and unpredictable. You take your place on a low wooden bench, feeling the relief as your tired leg muscles finally begin to go slack. The air here is warmer and smells of wood smoke and a simmering stew of lentils and salt pork. It is a hearty, grounding scent that competes with the lingering, sharp tang of the workshop. You find a quiet, sleepy irony in the fact that while the rest of Rome might keep its distance because of your professional aroma, within these walls, that same scent is a badge of membership. It is the smell of shared effort and common purpose. You look around at your fellow fullers, their faces illuminated by the flickering orange light of a few small oil lamps. These are the people who understand the rhythm of the dance and the sting of the sulfur better than anyone else. A quirky, fringe tidbit about your guild life involves your unique relationship with the owl. The owl is the sacred bird of Minerva, but for fullers, it has a more specific, almost humorous significance. During the festival of Quinquatria, when the guild celebrates its patroness, you don't just offer prayers, you participate in a tradition involving the fuller's owl. Historians believe that a live owl was often kept in the workshop as a sort of mascot, and during festivals, it would be honored with small garlands. There is even some evidence that the bird's unique characteristics, its nocturnal nature and its silent, observant presence, was seen as a reflection of the fuller's own watchful, steady work. You look at the small bronze owl perched on the edge of the shrine and offer it a tired, respectful nod. It is a quiet companion in the long hours of the day. As the communal meal is served, the conversation is low and melodic. No one raises their voice. The day's labor has drained the need for loud proclamation. Instead, there is a steady hum of talk about the price of fuller's earth, the quality of the latest shipment of wool from the north, and the gossip of the neighborhood. Historians still argue whether the wealth and organization of these guilds allowed individual fullers to eventually move up the social ladder, perhaps even entering the lower ranks of the local aristocracy, or if the sickening truth of their trade meant they were perpetually socially isolated regardless of their bank accounts. You've seen guild masters who wear rings of gold and host lavish dinners. Yet even they are sometimes the target of a poet's snide remark about the scent of their money. You find yourself indifferent to the debate. Here, in the circle of the guild, your status is clear and respected. You receive a bowl of the warm stew, the ceramic feeling solid and comforting in your hands. The first sip is savory and rich, a perfect antidote to the physical exhaustion of the day. You tear off a piece of crusty bread and dip it into the broth, savoring the slow, rhythmic process of eating. This is the time for guild secrets, the passing down of techniques and tips that aren't found in any book. An older fuller leans toward a younger apprentice, describing the exact way to tilt the sulfur cage when the wind is coming from the sea. You listen to the cadence of their voices, the words flowing together like the water in the rinse basins. It is a verbal tapestry of knowledge, woven over generations. The guild also serves a more solemn purpose. You know that a portion of the dues you pay each month goes into a common fund to ensure that every member receives a proper burial. In the Roman world, where the afterlife is a mirror of one's dignity on earth, this is a profound comfort. You think about the guild's funeral monuments you've seen outside the city gates. Sturdy, respectable stone structures decorated with the tools of your trade. It gives you a sense of permanence. You aren't just a fleeting shadow in the workshop. You are part of a lineage that is recorded in stone and remembered by the brotherhood. You lean back against the wall, watching the way the lamplight plays across the ceiling. The frescoes seem to move in the shifting shadows, the painted fullers continuing their dance long after you have stopped. You feel a deep sense of peace. The world outside the fullonica might be a place of complex social maneuvering and political upheaval. But here, the rules are simple. You work together, you eat together, and you protect one another. It is a miniature society within the empire, a sanctuary of shared experience. You feel the warmth of the meal spreading through your body, loosening the last bits of tension in your shoulders. As the evening progresses, the talk turns to the upcoming festival. There will be a procession through the streets, and the guild will carry its banners with pride. You imagine the sight of the brotherhood marching together, their togas, the whitest in the city, gleaming in the sun. It is a moment of public vindication, a time when the sicker aspects of the job are forgotten and the craftsmanship is put on full display. You look forward to the rhythm of the march, a different kind of dance that connects you to the entire city. It is a reminder that even the most invisible workers are a vital part of the Roman spectacle. The boring reality of guild administration, the counting of coins, the debating of rules, the settling of small disputes, is what keeps the shop running smoothly. You appreciate the stability it provides. You think about the fringe tidbits you've heard about guilds in other cities, where they have even more elaborate rituals or secret handshakes. You wonder if they, too, find the same comfort in the smell of the wool and the warmth of the communal fire. You suspect they do. The life of a fuller is a universal story of hard work and quiet community. The fire in the hearth has burned down to a pile of glowing red embers, casting a soft, warm light that doesn't reach the corners of the room. The conversation has dwindled to a few whispered words and the occasional clink of a ceramic cup. You feel a heavy, pleasant drowsiness settling over you. The world is narrowing down to the glow of the embers and the steady breathing of your companions. You are part of a guild, a family of choice, and there is no better place to be as the night deepens. You think about the sickening truth, one last time, with a final bit of gentle sarcasm. If the price of this community, this security, and this sense of purpose is a bit of a sharp scent and some tired muscles, then it is a price you are more than willing to pay. The rest of the world can have its perfumes and its marble halls. You have the brotherhood of the vat and the protection of the owl. You feel a quiet pride in your calloused hands and your soft skin. They are the marks of a life lived with intention and rhythm. The lamps are being extinguished one by one, the room slowly surrendering to the darkness. You rise from your bench, your movements slow and careful so as not to disturb the quiet. You walk toward your sleeping pallet, the floor cool beneath your feet. The workshop is silent now, a dark cavern of stone and wood waiting for the dawn. You settle into your blankets, the scent of the clean wool surrounding you like a familiar embrace. You are a fuller, a member of the guild, and you are at home. As you drift towards sleep, your mind plays back the events of the day, the gathering of the liquid, the rhythm of the dance, the white clouds of the sulfur, and the steady pressure of the press. But most of all, you feel the warmth of the guild. It is the steady heartbeat of your life, the thing that gives meaning to the labor and comfort to the rest. You close your eyes and the image of the bronze owl seems to watch over you in the darkness, a silent guardian of your dreams. The city of Pompeii is quiet now, the stars bright over the rooftops, and you are content to let the world fade away, knowing that you belong to a tradition as old and as sturdy as the stone walls that surround you. The deep, velvety blue of the night has finally settled over the city of Pompeii, and the workshop of the fullonica has become a sanctuary of absolute stillness. You walk one last time through the courtyard, your footsteps making a soft, rhythmic tap-slide on the cool terracotta tiles. The air is crisp and carries the faint, sweet scent of the drying wool, a stark and pleasant contrast to the sharp aromas of the morning. You move toward the large drying racks where the day's work is suspended. The togas, now perfectly cleaned, bleached, brushed, and pressed, hang like pale, stationary ghosts in the moonlight. You reach out and run your hand along the edge of a heavy cloak. It feels cool, dense, and remarkably smooth, a testament to the hours of dancing and the power of the oak press. This is the moment of sunset over the drying racks, the final phase of your daily cycle. The mainstream historical fact about Roman industry is that it never truly stopped. While the humans slept, the natural processes of drying and setting continued. You look up at the open atrium roof, where the stars are pinned against the dark sky like silver nails. The moonlight spills down in a clean, vertical shaft, illuminating the rising steam from the last of the rinse water. It is a slow, ethereal movement, a ghostly white vapor that curls toward the stars before vanishing into the night air. You stand there for a moment, letting your own breathing synchronize with the quiet rhythm of the city. A quirky, fringe tidbit that you often ponder during these quiet hours is the Roman belief in the breath of the fabric. Many craftsmen of your era believed that wool was a living thing that needed to exhale the moisture and the chemicals it had absorbed during the day. Historians of ancient technology suggest that the specific layout of the fullonica, with its open-air courtyards and high-ceilinged workrooms, was designed specifically to facilitate this breathing. You can almost feel it now, the subtle release of tension as the fibers settle into their final, perfect form. It is a quiet, microscopic transformation that happens in the silence, away from the prying eyes of the customers. The sound of the city has faded to a distant, hollow murmur. Somewhere far off, a guard's sandals click against the basalt paving stones, the sound echoing through the narrow streets before being swallowed by the shadows. Closer, within the walls of the shop, you hear the soft, rhythmic drip, drip, drip of a leaky pipe near the aqueduct intake. It is a slow, steady cadence that acts as a metronome for the night. You find it deeply hypnotic, a sound that reminds you of the constant flow of life and the persistence of the work. Historians still argue whether the fullers of Pompeii were aware of the impending dangers of the nearby mountain, Vesuvius, or if the frequent small tremors were simply accepted as part of the background noise of their lives. To you, the earth is steady enough, and the only rhythm that matters is the one you create with your hands. You move to the edge of the courtyard and sit on a low stone ledge, leaning your back against the cool masonry. Your body is heavy with a good exhaustion, the kind that comes from knowing every muscle has been used to its full potential. You look at the silhouettes of the wicker sulfur cages, now tucked away in the shadows. They look like sleeping bells, their work of transformation finished. You think about the sickening truth of your profession one last time, but without the sarcasm of the earlier hours. There is a profound dignity in the dirtiest of jobs. You are the one who deals with the waste, so that others can be pure. You are the one who endures the sting of the smoke, so that others can look majestic. It is a sacrifice of the senses that earns you a place at the very heart of the Roman world. You watch as a small owl, perhaps the very mascot of your guild, flits across the opening of the roof, its wings making a soft, muffled whoosh in the air. It perches on the edge of the tiles, its golden eyes reflecting the moonlight. You feel a sense of companionship with the bird. Like you, it is a creature of the night, observant and steady. You think about the togas that will be picked up tomorrow morning. The merchants, the lawyers, and the priests will come to the shop, paying their coins and taking their garments with a nod of thanks. They will never see this side of the fullonica. The quiet beauty of the moonlight on the wool, the rhythmic dripping of the water, or the tired fuller resting in the shadows. But that is as it should be. The labor is yours, the result is theirs. The air has grown cooler, and you feel a slight shiver run down your spine. It is time to truly end the day. You rise from the ledge, your joints giving a faint, satisfying pop. As you stretch, you walk back toward the storage area, making sure the heavy wooden shutters are securely fastened against the night air. The workshop is now a cocoon of darkness and silence. You feel your way to your pallet, the familiar textures of the room guiding you more surely than any lamp could. You lie down, the rough wool of your own blanket feeling warm and protective. As you close your eyes, the images of the day begin to blur into a soft, dreamlike montage. You see the ripples in the treading vat, the white clouds of the sulfur, and the smooth grain of the oak press. You hear the rhythmic third of the fuller's dance, a sound that seems to beat in time with your own heart. The boring repetition of your life is not a burden, it is a cradle. It is the steady, reliable frame upon which your existence is built. You are a fuller of Rome, a master of the sickening truth and the brilliant result, and you are ready to drift into the deep, restorative sleep of the honest laborer. The world outside continues its slow rotation, the stars moving in their ancient, rhythmic patterns. But here, in the heart of the fullonica, the cycle is complete. The clothes are dry, the fires are out, and the work is done. You let out a final, long breath, feeling your mind grow quiet and your body grow light. The scent of the clean wool is the last thing you notice before the darkness takes hold, a soft and comforting promise that tomorrow the dance will begin again. The world has grown very still now. The journey through the damp vats and the sulphurous clouds is over. You can feel the weight of your limbs, heavy and relaxed against the mattress, as if you are sinking gently into a cloud of soft, brushed wool. The air around you is cool and calm, and the distant sounds of the ancient city have faded into a soft, indistinct hum. There is no more work to be done today, no more rhythms to keep, no more weights to lift. Your breathing has slowed to a deep, effortless pace, a quiet tide pulling you further away from the waking world. Think of the white togas hanging in the moonlight, perfectly still and perfectly silent. Think of the cool stone of the workshop, holding the peace of the night. You are safe, you are warm, and the history of the world is just a faint, pleasant whisper in the back of your mind. Let the shadows lengthen and the stillness grow. There is nothing left but the quiet, the warmth, and the gentle pull of sleep. The story of the fuller is complete, and your own story for tonight is just beginning to drift into dreams. The colors of the day have faded to soft grays and deep blues. You are part of the long, quiet lineage of those who find peace in the rhythm of the night. Sleep now, let the world go, and find your rest in the soft embrace of history.